NATO leaders have adopted a joint declaration as their summit wrapped in Ankara, affirming a unified stance on several issues, including support for Ukraine. The surprisingly amicable end followed a more turbulent beginning when U.S. President Donald Trump complained about a lack of support from his European allies for his war in Iran.
The alliance came to Ankara with one overriding objective: to demonstrate unity at a time of growing global tensions. And it looks like that's exactly what they did.
I just want to say there was tremendous love in that room. If there's one word that comes out of today, it's unification. I've never seen anything like it.
But that isn't how things started. The beginning of the summit was quickly overshadowed by concerns over deepening fractures in the alliance, highlighted by the US president.
I'm not happy with NATO because of the fact that they didn't want to help us with the #1 state sponsor of terror, that's Iran. They were unwilling to help us. But I was really testing. I wanted to see whether or not they'd be there.
Trump said the ceasefire with Iran may be over. And he also returned to an issue that triggered one of NATO's worst internal disputes in recent years: Greenland.
It was Greenland that, and it continues to be, that should be controlled by the United States, not by Denmark.
It prompted Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen to again make clear that Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark.
I heard the US president yesterday, and I think the US position is unfortunately very clear on this topic. And our position is as clear as it has been all through. Greenland is, of course, not for sale.
Secretary General Mark Rutte tried to de-escalate, insisting the US president's comments were no reflection on NATO's unity. Credible deterrence depends on unity. And on paper, NATO delivered exactly that with a final declaration agreed to by all 32 leaders. But by undermining allies, complaining about their positions on Iran, and their repeating claims to their territory, Donald Trump raises questions about his commitment to NATO security. NATO's commitment to Ukraine was also on display at the summit, including from Donald Trump himself. He said the United States will allow Kiev to manufacture Patriot interceptors under license, a significant win for President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has repeatedly appealed for stronger protection against intensifying Russian attacks. Zelensky also secured promises of 140 billion euros in support over the next 2 years, a strong message to Moscow that Europe intends to stand by Ukraine for the long haul. Yet, when it comes to paying for that support, NATO's European allies are not entirely united.
They are able to fight because of the support from Western countries, and that support needs to be sustained. Right now, quite a few number of countries are actually delivering the vast majority of all the support. That needs to be increased from other countries as well.
In the end, the summit's declaration reaffirmed NATO's core guarantee that an attack on one ally is an attack against all. All 32 leaders agreed, including President Trump.
DW's Terry Schultz is following the NATO summit in Ankara. Now, the summit was supposed to focus on defense spending and support for Ukraine, but Iran has loomed large. How much has the Middle East crisis overshadowed NATO's core agenda?
That's right, Sarah. In between the 2 days of the summit, this renewed bombing of the U.S. on Iran began. And so everyone woke up here today on what is the main day of the meeting. And that was what was being talked about. That definitely dominated the discussion this morning between President Trump in his meeting with Secretary General Mark Rutte. And that's where Trump announced that he believed that the MOU with Iran, this extended ceasefire, was dead. It was over. And he said that there may well be more attacks tonight. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth canceled his planned trip to Israel from here in Ankara to stay here and manage that situation. So clearly, that is something that allies are very worried about because, as you mentioned, this was something that caused such deep divisions in NATO when they did not enthusiastically support the previous round of bombing, even though, Mark Rutte has been careful to point out, up to 5,000 sorties did leave from European air bases. So allies supported Donald Trump quietly on this, but their publics simply don't back the war, and so they couldn't say anything more.
And Terry, Ukraine featured in this final summit declaration being called a contributor to NATO security. Does it change anything in terms of Ukraine's relationship with the alliance?
Well, of course, what Ukraine wants in the long run is to become a member of NATO, and that's nowhere close to being on the agenda for the alliance. Yesterday, it got a lot of new arms deals. It's selling its drones to other allies. But perhaps, Sarah, the biggest change for Iran out of this summit came today when Donald Trump indicated that he would allow Ukraine to start producing its own PAC-3 interceptors for the Patriot systems. Now, that's something that Ukraine has been requesting for a long time because it simply can't get them delivered by allies fast enough with all of these ballistic missile attacks coming night after night from Russia. Now, these interceptors take up to 2 years to build in the West, so we're not talking about an overnight game changer, but certainly Ukraine has been able to shorten timelines on a lot of weapons, and they're very much hoping that they'll be able to do that now.
Trump said afterwards that there had been a lot of love, a lot of unity at this summit, but he himself stirred up some division. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That's right. And I will tell you more about the Love Fest as well. But first, Donald Trump threw sort of a political football back into the NATO meeting by bringing up Greenland again. He again said that he believes the United States should control the island, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. That did not go over well. Plenty of leaders talked about that in their arrival statements, with them reminding President Trump that Greenland is a part of Denmark and Greenlanders will decide their own future. He also really trashed Spain, saying that he was again going to try to cut off trade with Spain, which is not possible because it's a member of the European Union. But then by the end, Sarah, at this last press conference, it was almost bizarre. He said love over and over. He said the other allied leaders had told him that they loved him, and he couldn't get over it. He said this is amazing unification, great summit. He said he couldn't get over, how much love was expressed in the room. So that's not a word we normally hear thrown around at NATO summits, and it was quite a way to end the day, I can tell you.
What do you think, Terry, the overall message coming out of this NATO meeting will be? What is the state of the alliance?
Well, if you had asked me at midday, I would have had a different answer than now. I think that now allies are very much breathing a sigh of relief. I don't know if they'll confirm that they expressed their love to Donald Trump, but they certainly would prefer these kind of messages coming out of the United States than the ones that he was saying this morning, that, he couldn't count on them. He has said in the last days that allies are not loyal to him. So I think that everyone is saying that this was a successful summit because in the end, they passed their declaration, which reaffirmed their commitment to collective security, the famous Article 5. They promised Ukraine that they would be continuing to fund it at a rate of 70 billion euros, including EU money for the next 2 years. They said that they will continue shifting the burden of defense of Europe onto the Europeans. Everybody's really on board with that. So in this final declaration, they reaffirmed all of those things, and Donald Trump didn't put up a protest. So I think everybody's really breathing a sigh of relief, if not love.
Terry Schultz at the NATO summit in Ankara. Thank you.